Welcome to Growthology. I am Carlos Hidalgo, your host, and today with me I have a longtime friend, colleague, and just a all-around good dude, Craig Rosenberg. Welcome to Growthology.
I know. I'm so glad you said that, man. We've known each other for a long time.
We have, and if you're nasty, they'll call you the funnelholic.
Oh man. I actually no, it's not if I'm not, it's if I say, do you know who I am? Then
Yes, yes, yeah. So, quick story on that. When Craig and I first met,
Oh, it was so embarrassing.
I was at a trade show, and I think it was Caitlin who worked for you,
Yeah.
came up to me and said, "Hey, are you Carlos?" I was at another agency at the time. And she said, "Craig Rosenberg wants to meet you." I was like, "Okay." So I finally meet Craig. I think it was only minutes after. And you shook my hand and said, "Do you know who I am?" I kind of laughed and I thought, who is this guy? And I said, "Excuse me." And you were like, "Do you know who I am?" Like you were you were up there with Steve Jobs. And I was like, I forget
Oh man.
exactly what I said, but my face must have said a whole lot more. And then you were like, "Dude, I'm just screwing with you." And it was in that moment I knew this guy and I are going to get along.
I think, well, what you were thinking, you told me later. I'm not sure you said it. I don't remember,
It's a
but you're like,
family show. It's a
this
family
is
show.
this is the most arrogant guy I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, that's
And yeah, I when you said excuse me, I was debating, I remember this, whether to go again or to give it up that I was kidding. And then I went for it again, and you must have been like, oh my God, who is this guy?
but the thing is, you didn't let go of my hand. You just kept like a firm grip on the hand, like you were trying to exert some kind of authority.
Oh man.
You're like
Okay.
the most opposite of that than anybody I've ever met. So,
Oh man, what a great story. That is how we met.
yes, that is how we met, and we've been fast friends ever since.
That's
And
right.
you're just one of those. And then we sat a few years ago in Houston and had a couple of beers and
That
watched
was awesome.
the playoff game. And so yeah, it's always a great time, and I'm glad we could connect and get
Yeah.
you on the show. And I'm loving the Larry Bud Melman glasses.
Oh man, these, I mean, I've been, so I lose glasses, right? I lose probably three a week. And so I've just given up. Like initially when I first got, my prescription, I went and got nice ones. I went to Warby Parker, or I went,
Oh,
my
sure.
wife's like, "Oh, you can get these." Then I lost them like a week later. Now we just go to Costco or to Walgreens, and if there's a
Oh
three
yeah.
pack, I buy it. And I don't care anymore. And everyone likes it. I mean, I wear the wildest glasses, and it's like now part of my persona.
Dollar General. That's where I get my readers.
I
You
love
can't beat it. You can't beat it.
No, no. I mean,
Because
I
when they
take the
break,
pressure off.
yeah, because when they break, which inevitably they will, you don't worry about it. You're like, oh, I just got to go spend another $1.99 to.
Right. Throw them in the garbage and go buy another.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, before we jump into B2B stuff, um, if you weren't in B2B, which is all the context I've ever known you, what would
Yeah.
you be doing?
Well, I don't know if you know this, but I started my working career as a teacher and water polo coach. I did that I taught for a year, maybe a year and a half, and then, coached. And I did that before I entered the world of tech. And just
Okay.
at the time, it was like, I remember it was hard because, I'd go in the teacher's room and they were complaining. They were so negative. They'd all been there tenured, been there for a long time. I remember just talking to my dad, and he's like, "Look, you can always go back." And I was
Yeah,
like, I got to
good
do it.
point.
Because all my buddies were living in the city. I was like out in the burbs teaching, and they're like having a blast and making a little bit of money and having fun. And I was like, I got to do something different, at least initially. But yeah, I mean, that would be something that I would definitely go back to. It's hard, but it's really rewarding. And I've been doing coaching the kids basketball team a little bit. That's been fun. Just getting, I've got three kids under the age of 12, so I can't do much with it. But like that would be it. I would definitely do that again.
I could actually see you as a really good teacher or even a college professor. I think, yeah,
Oh man, I don't know about that. I mean, the second grade math is about where I ended up in my academic career. So if I can help them with addition, subtraction, maybe a couple fractions here and there, I'll be way better off. No, I taught high school actually, it was a resource class. So it were the kids who couldn't make it in the, sort of everyday classroom. So it's really good learning about, sort of the importance of, family and stability and the, tough life that some kids have at in high school. And it was like, that made it sort of super hard and super rewarding. And your odds are low. You get 20 kids, and I just like the principal like sat me down and she was just like, if you can get one or two to
Mhm.
get through this and to have a normal life, then you're in good shape. And yeah, but I wish I would hope that if I did it over a longer period, I could get more to sort of to be able to have sort of fruitful careers, lives, families, etc. But there was there was a lot where you were like, oh my God, hope, the biggest thing I learned there that I took through everything I did was the importance of hope. Hope is like this
So
thing, yeah, it's this word we overuse. It's on like, dentist chair posters and stuff, but actually you just realize it's like you look at a good TV show or movie, it has hope. You look at like, and it's like it's this incredible, powerful idea. And it's like I just realized, it's this thing, can we instill hope? And that actually there's something chemical for you in your body where you have hope. It just changes a lot, so many different things. So I've taken that with me forever. Yeah.
well, okay, so let's see if we can translate that to anything in B2B. Because right
Yeah.
now, if you go on LinkedIn or if you listen to podcasts, everything is about what vendors need to do. New playbooks, new
Yeah.
names for old motions or old tactics. We've just slapped some new names on it.
Yeah.
Uh, what do B2B customers hope vendors get about them?
Yeah, I mean that's so I knew like when we were sort of preparing for this, I'm like, Carlos has been on his not soapbox because that sort of has a negative connotation, but you've been banging on people for years. It's like we have to reverse engineer from the buyer and the experiences they want. And that is actually now, remember when we first met, it was like everyone was talking about how the buyer had changed,
Mhm.
but they did, but everyone kind of did the same thing.
Right.
And now the buyer has changed. I mean, they haven't changed at their core, right? They still have like the base needs that we, sort of tried to serve 60 years ago are the same, but like things, there is this level of busyness that's always been there. I think people bring that up, but the most important is that they have a ton of there's a hesitancy. They have to be, when they buy something in B2B, they're scared. I mean, there's this fear that they have to overcome because now when you buy things, the impetus is on you, the buyer, and internally that will reflect on you because now there is a level of scrutiny, and if you make this decision, right, where it's harder for them to make these decisions. That is actually the most important thing that we need to take in. Now, many people, so I'm doing that because I'm not sure where you're going to come out on this. It depends who I'm talking to. I either tell them, look, at the decisions were always hard. In B2B, we had like a 3-year sort of window where decisions became easy because people were like, here, money's cheap, go buy it, figure it out. But that wasn't normal. I mean, I tell people, guys, like enterprise software was so hard to market and sell, and it always has been. We just had this window where it wasn't. And it's through a soft. We're just coming back to the mean here. But I will say that right now, the amount of sort of other people that look at what you're buying and how you need to sell it internally as a buyer, those things, there's a hesitant buyer now. And if you combine that with the fact that enterprise software has traditionally been hard,
Mhm.
then we have to sort of take that in. So what does that mean? Like these are things that you've been talking about for a long time. I just don't know that everyone felt the urgency. Now they do. It's like for you, this would not be a surprise, but like, we have to figure out what they need in order to feel comfortable internally making a bet with you. And often that means like, Matt Dixon, I don't know if you've talked to him recently.
Not
Do you know?
recently. Yeah, I know Matt. I haven't talked to him recently.
Okay, but all his new stuff, right, is so interesting because one of the things, like for example, is something I think you and I have talked about is like, well, look, like if you if you're trying to help a buyer buy, well then guys, like you have to actually talk about the competition. Sometimes you can refer, like he talks about how he listened to thousands of, it's the Jolt Effect, his new
Yeah.
book, and it's
Yeah.
really interesting because he's like, look, I listen to these calls. The best salespeople go, they'll send their competitors content
Hmm.
because this trust building has to be real. It can't be like we've talked about trust for a long time, but like we still didn't trust ourselves enough. We didn't have enough belief that we were able to confidently say, well, look, like I'm SAP, look at this Oracle buyer's guide. It's the best thing out there.
Yeah.
That's an example of some of the things we have to rethink and really figure out kind of what's happening with our buyer in order to help them be able to feel really comfortable with their decisions. The things that we always talked about, it's like you look at the buying experience and we figure out what they need. We did it, but it was always in our favor.
Hmm.
Everything we did was still, despite what we knew, everything was still 100% in our favor. Now it's not, I agree. You're going to tell me it's not new. And I totally understand. I totally understand that actually. It is new for a lot of folks.
Sure.
It's really hard for them. I think the other thing that changed, I do think landing pages, making them go through, like, if we look at all the steps, like we want to make things as accessible and easy and sort of
Absolutely.
as possible. And that's why, where I'm hearing when you talk about playbooks breaking, and you're hearing this, you're out there, it's like some of our most famous demand gen folks that we've known for years that killed it. It's like, well, my numbers are down. Well, yeah, because you're making them go just to
Right.
download a piece of content. They have to go to a landing page. Like, forget it. Like,
Yeah.
they don't want to do that. And like, and just admit it. It's better. It was always better for you. It wasn't better for them. Like, it just wasn't. And so, yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I just did said a bunch of things, but I do think I do think it's important. And by the way, the other thing I tell you, Carlos, is even though some of these things have been around for a long time, it is important for us to help people change, to sort of make a bigger deal about it than it. You know what I mean? It's like we have to really, the buyer, this like I mean, I always worry because salespeople treat the buyers like Bowser, right? Like oh my God, this big entity. It's like, no, man, they're humans.
Yeah.
They are literally eating at the same restaurant as you, freaking out about paying their mortgage payment, streaming on Netflix. It's not Bowser. And so like I do worry about that, and actually sort of overplaying this big beast of the buyer. But it is important to say, look, like these buyers today, there's a hesitancy, there's a fear and uncertainty, and doubt in their minds, and really sort of hammering that home because I do think that will help drive change. And we
So
have to.
there's so much in there, and I appreciate going into that level of detail. Question for you, what you're seeing. So you're talking about the fear of the buyer. Now we're hearing more and more about that full customer journey. There's
Yeah.
a there's so much more attention, at least being written about, whether it's actually being applied to customer marketing, right?
Yeah.
So that there's also the buyer remorse stage that
Mhm.
everybody goes through is I've purchased this and then, oh my word, back to fear. Did I
Yeah.
make the right decision? Is it that fear that's now saying having the individual, whether it's the first time purchase or upsell, cross sell, retention, saying, I'm fearful of this. And if this backfires, it could be a blight on my career, could cost me my job. So I'm going to bring in multiple people. So
Mhm.
I'm not the only one stuck with the decision. Is that why we're seeing these purchase groups grow? I think the last stat I saw was 7 to 9 individuals for any sizable B2B purchase.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a combination of the individual, uh, and the thing I think people don't realize, their boss is fearful.
Hmm.
His or her boss is also fearful. Finance is fearful. Everyone, there's this whole train of folks that don't want to make they don't want to make bad decisions. And so like you're not only, as the buyer, you're not only looping in more people so that you have more buy-in. Your boss wants you to loop in more people. So you go in and go, well, I did this. I got 7 people lined up for the meeting. They're like, well, I really need you to make sure that IT signed off on this because I don't, remember like SaaS would be like, oh, you don't have to sell to IT. Now it's like all of them are selling to some tech group that's analyzing everything. Um, and, finance is like, people, I mean, that's a Bowser for sure, right? Everyone's afraid of fine. I'm like, these, like, once again, like these are people that have to report spend, right?
Right.
And so, and they need you to have ROI so they feel comfortable. So I think it's I mean, everyone, and that continues to expand the number of stakeholders. So I think you're right, and right that there's other folks being added. There was a great LinkedIn post. I got to find it for you. It's like this. He did a 65K deal, and he had looked at all the things that happened. I think it was 7 meetings, 13 stakeholders, maybe 16. It was incredible, and I'm like, that's the way the game has to be played here. Like they need everyone on board with this thing, and that is really I don't know. I think it's a change. I think the other thing that's really interesting on the stakeholder map is the shadow stakeholders.
Hmm.
There's stakeholders now. I think this is evening itself out, but remember, right after things sort of fell apart in the economy for a minute, um, you know, you just heard about these deals where people were swooping in that even the buyer didn't know about and
Right.
killing deals. And I saw this in a lot of the supply chain folks that we were working with. I don't know how many of those guys you've been working with lately, but it's like they were getting sniped. And
Yep.
I was like, yeah, and by the way, you have this problem because you got this buyer really excited about the thing he or she cares about. You did not factor in that there's other people that don't care about that specific thing that this product does. They need to know something different, right,
That's
to feel really comfortable with it. So the shadow stakeholder thing has been really interesting. I do think that is actually becoming less and less because the buyers are relearning how to buy. I had my buddy Ted Purcell on my podcast. I don't know if you know Ted, but he was like, here's one of the biggest insights I have is that buyers think they know how to buy, but actually they don't anymore.
right.
They, they're relearning how to buy this stuff because
They
the
are.
game changed.
They are.
It's so interesting, It's just anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's interesting you say that because I have a belief that by and large, especially when buyers buy, and again, I know we're using the term buyers, we're talking about whether it's first sale or post.
Yes.
So many times they try to address the symptom. Well, this is happening. If a marketing through content or whatever they put on an event or salespeople can say, all right, that's your symptom. Let's get to your root cause need, which is again, challenger sale, right? A little bit of the challenger methodology. If I can help that customer identify the root cause that's causing the symptoms, I think it does a whole wealth of things. I think it reduces the fear,
Yeah.
it builds trust. And if you
Mhm.
can do it from a position of, look, whether you buy from me or not, these are the things you need to address. I mean, that's a game changer. That's helping customers buy, not let's just flood them with more content. Let's put them to more events or, let's remove the gates. Now we've made it easy. That's great. If you still have crappy content, you've just made it easy to digest crappy content.
Yeah, I totally agree. And by the way, you said something that's really key, which I learned from my mentor years ago, Stu Silverman. And I
Mhm.
think I've told you about Stu, greatest name of all time. If your name's Stu Silverman, you have to either be a guru, right, or a guru. You don't have any other choices.
That's right.
And but he used to say, look, like the first thing we got to do, whether you buy from me or not, is figure out what's happening in your pipeline and figure out what you guys need to do. And that was all people would bring us in to go buy. We were, inside sales consultants, and he'd say, well, look, I mean, I'm going to tell you all about that, but let's just spend a minute here since I've been around for 25 years. And like, let's just dive in and let's figure out what's really happening here. And if you and I can agree on what that real problem is, then I'm happy to talk to you. But like, that's the first step, whether you choose to buy from me or not. Whether you choose to buy from me or not, that's the hardest thing for organizations to say, and especially now with conversion rates being what they are and pipelines like a little bit down. So it's like you feel like you have to turn everything into a deal. And it's like, I mean, that's actually doesn't work. And by the way, you might lose the deal now. Let's say there is no deal.
Right.
You got to be okay with that. You just build trust. The thing you keep talking about is the customer side too, which is after they buy. That actually is really important because look, we might diagnose something that has to translate into how we onboard everyone and how we track how they're doing against it. And we have to continue to educate against that symptom and solution to the problem. And we have to keep focusing on that. And then we have to keep digging because that is the key to keeping them and growing them, et cetera. And like that expertise has to translate over the course of time. And so I do think it's a really good point that you're bringing in. I do appreciate you keep bringing up, new acquisition versus sort of keeping them, growing them, et cetera. The whole concept that you just brought up is important across the entire life cycle. And like a QBR, like this guy who's working with me is working on these QBRs with, some of our portfolio. And it's like, well, look, like this is our opportunity to go help them with something. It's not, don't just go in there and run through how you're using the product. Of course, we want to make sure that but like you get to go on site or you get to get other stakeholders in the room. Let's go in and figure out how we can help them. And by the way, it may have nothing to do with what you're selling, but your expertise in this market is invaluable. And let's go, let's continue to have those conversations, continue to figure out kind of what the real issue is and see what solutions there are, whether they choose to buy from you or not.
Right. Because it just wins that trust. And it's important to understand that once they become a customer, there may now be new players at the table.
Totally.
Right. So some of the key stakeholders may have changed, or if you're going to upsell and cross sell. You mentioned onboarding.
Yeah.
I'd like your take on this. We have found, we don't have any quantitative research to back this up, but we have found by and large with our customers who are tech clients, the key to retention often lies in how they onboard their clients and how they drive adoption of their solutions. What's your take on that?
Yes, yes, and yes. It's like I don't have the data either, but I can tell you and just I did see the data at one point in my life. And I do, I'm starting to dig into this again, but like onboarding success, and then you can call whatever, adoption, even mastery, right?
Yeah.
There's this other step. I mean, you remember you were in the marketing automation game. Mastery was huge in retention and upsell. If we could get them to mastery, that was like it was all over, right? And there's still this brand affinity for the masters of, let's say, a Marketo, who you hear less and less of, but like there are people that will not let go of that thing because of the mastery that we built.
That's right.
And so 100%. And like how fast and effectively can we get them into the product, and then how fast and effectively can we get adoption, like truly using it, and then how fast and effectively can we get them into mastery. Those things are huge factors. It's everything.
Yeah, I thought you would agree with that. And again, we don't have anything quantifiable, but time and time again. And then when you start talking that way to CMOs, they go, I'm really glad you mentioned that. We have a retention problem. And then you take a look at that area and it's like,
Right.
I like the guy who told his wife, I said, I loved you the day we got married. If it changes, I'll let you know.
Right.
And the only time the customer hears from him again is when their 3-year renewal is up.
Yeah.
It's an email that says, do you want to renew?
Yeah.
It's left to a customer service person who has no context of that account whatsoever.
I know. It is like, it's such a bad customer experience.
Full.
I know it's tough. I mean, but you're right. Like, if you there's these certain things that are happening in our business where the best thing, to do is to help them sort of dig that out. And it's right, it's not the first thing they'll tell you, but it is when we start talking, they'll, realize, hey, we've got this problem. And I think that, yeah, I mean, as you said, there's like been a lot of lip service on customer marketing. There's even been a lot of lip service on just customer. You know, we're not,
Yes.
still, so many people haven't optimized for this. And it's the same thing where we just had this moment in time where everything in selling software was easy. It was like everything was happening, and we just neglected a lot of fundamental things across the customer experience that we can't neglect anymore. And so the good news is everyone's sort of putting that all back on the table. The bad news is they're trying to solve for it with half the headcount that they had before, or even worse. And so, that's we gotta there's a lot to be done there, but it's really important. And otherwise, churn rates won't improve.
No, they won't. And it's got to be more than lip service. And I'm glad you mentioned the experience. I think from what I saw is leading up to 2020, we were 100% in that experience economy. The
Yeah.
pandemic, I think collectively people said, okay, we'll give you a break. We get it. Things aren't normal. We'll give you a pass. I think now it's come back with a vengeance.
That's
Where
right.
if
Two
you
acts.
don't deliver that experience, because you said it, right? We are consumers, regardless if we're at work or not. We want that ease. We want that benefit. We want that instant value. I don't have time to put up with a vendor who can't deliver. So if you can't do that for me, it's time for me to move on. And it's all based on experience, which is not the same as service. And oftentimes brands get those confused.
Big time. Big time.
All
I
right.
think,
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, please. Let's
So,
try to get number two.
yeah. So I don't even think we've hit any of the questions that we
No,
are.
no, you threw me, you came out of the gate hot, and so we've been rolling with it ever since.
Well, this is what happens when, I finally learned who you were. I knew you were capable of anything. So, go to market is all the rage. That's all, everybody's talking about GTM and however many motions. And again, I stand by that. That's probably not new. We've probably put some lipstick on a pig and taken some things that have been around for a while and slapped a new name on them. However, I do believe that go to market is important. And I think customers need to really understand what their go to market is and rally sales, marketing, customer success, and product, and even finance around that. All that
Right.
said, have you seen one of these motions that is a faster path to growth versus others?
Well, look, I think first of all, I will channel my inner Carlos, and I don't think you've said it this way, but this would be something I would take from your sort of constantly in our conversations talking about the buyer, the customer, et cetera, is that the vendor doesn't determine their go-to-market. The buyer does, the customer does. Everyone's like, at Topo, we used to say something which was the shape of your funnel is determined by your customer. And so, early on in the early days of marketing automation, it was like volume was everything and the MQL game was everything. And it's like that worked for a certain type of customer. And it doesn't for others, which is why the sort of rebirth of ABM or account base was really important. Just adding a new flavor to the market was really important. And everyone said, well, I remember when I started banging my fist on the table that I said, well, no, it's got nothing to do with me. It's that you were sending 1,000 content emails to this big company, and that's not what they wanted.
Right.
Right. And that's not how they buy. And so your go-to-market is really informed by your target market. And that tells you everything. So that's really important. So I get people ask me about product-led growth all the time. It's like, yeah, obviously, like you've seen some of these growers. It's
Sure.
extraordinary, right? But it does, you've also seen these growers go, well, now we're going into the enterprise. It's like, well, that is a different go-to-market motion. It just is. And so I think it's really important that you work backwards from the market and you work backwards for the way they buy, and that informs your go-to-market. So, I mean, look, some of the biggest companies in the world are old school, carrying bags, 12 people on, selling, on their side, big deals, sell to only 800 accounts, but that's their market. That's what they do. And it's like, so if, but then we've seen these just high flying growers that are just pure product led, or like you take a Ring Central that was doing 30,000 to 50,000 content leads a month and converting that into business. Those are three different plays informed by the way people buy. And so for me, that's a tough thing to say. Like I've seen growers come from multiple go-to-market strategies. It is informed by the market. The thing I would say is like, often, your market as you segment will change your go-to-market strategy. That's really important. You see like multiple go-to-market strategies in some of these. What I would say, there's like growers and then there's extremely competent go-to-market organizations. Those that are extremely competent, right? Some grow fast, some grow well, but not like, through the roof, like a Canva or something. They have multiple go-to-market strategies against the various segments because those are different markets and different types of buyers. And so that I didn't answer your question. I sort of posed it in a different way, which is like, I've seen them all work, but it's really unlocking, the go-to-market strategy that works best for your market. And
Well, if you had said, well, it's this go-to-market motion above all, we would have done a little, let's dissect that and kind of poke holes in that. I love what you said is
okay, we're agreeing too much.
It's dictated by your customer.
It is.
It kind of gets back to the theme of this discussion is the absolute necessity and need to understand your customer, how they purchase, starting with brand all the way through to what's going to get them to become an advocate for your brand. What is going to get them to absolutely fall in love with your organization, your product, your services, and brand? And I can think of maybe two, maybe three companies where I'm that way about. And it took a lot. It took a lot for me to get there. But I think we can do that in B2B. And I think that's been the foundational element of almost every answer you've given is it's all about your customer.
It is. Yep. And I think that if I had to say one thing, I don't know, I'm still waiting for you to shoot arrows through me. You and I have, it just shows everyone on the listening to the podcast why me and Carlos have been friends for so long. But the definition of, whether if you want to I call it ideal customer profile, you might call it lipstick on the pig on that, because you're just defining your market and really understanding who those people, those organizations and people are. That the first thing I tell my team and the time at Toba, I don't care if you do volume selling. The first thing we got to do is who are we going, because you can't sell to the whole world. I'm sorry. Like I brought up Ring Central. They sell phone systems. Everyone has phone systems. Guess what? They had an ideal customer profile. I don't know if they still do, but back then I remember AJ Gandhi went through and he said, look, like an ideal customer has 3 SaaS products. They have, this, that, and the other. And it was like, and then that makes the difference. I'm like, okay, so everyone has a phone. You can technically sell to everyone in the world, but you can't.
Right.
And so everyone assumes when I'm talking about ideal customer profile, I'm talking about account-based, I mean small. I don't mean small. I just mean you got to know, understand, live and breathe. I don't know if you remember this. You and I think we're at this conference. It was the one in Chicago, and Motorola Rugged Wireless. Do you remember this guy? He got up there. It's the most interesting story. He got up and he said, look, what did I do? And everyone was expecting to hear more stories about lead nurturing and all this stuff. He said, no. First thing we did was I said, here's our market. Obviously there was research that went into it, and it was first responders and I think primarily, let's just go primarily first responders. He said, so the first thing I did was I said, everyone has 3 months to spend a week in the field with first responders. And then he posted pictures of first responders all over the organization. And he's like, and each week I'm going to bring in a new first responder to come in and talk about their lives and what they go through. And it was like, that was the game changer for them. And it was like, I just was like, dude, that's amazing. And he had a story is like this group, they went out when they were with folks that drove ambulances and they did ride-alongs and they went into the office with them after they finished their shift and watched how it was like this extraordinary just like immersion into their target market. And he's like, that changed everything. And I'm like, if you could start there, your decision making becomes infinitely better.
Absolutely. I remember our friend Richard Hill telling us with their John Deere account.
Yeah.
In a week with farmers, and you want to talk about ride-alongs, they were riding along in the tractor with these farmers who are spending 12 hours a day plowing fields, spraying their crops. And the campaign they put together won numerous awards, drove immense revenue for John Deere.
Yeah.
I love that example, and I do remember that conference. We've been to several again. I don't think that's when I had the pleasure to meet you, but I think it was well after that. But that's it, right? And so I appreciate you kind of bringing that back to the customer, because I see so many who are so worried about getting the right motion or the mix of motions, or we've got to do ABM to our top 20 accounts, and we can't do any more than that, because then that's not one-to-one, it's one to few. And I've heard you say ABM isn't about small, it's about targeted. And so, I think there's so much out there, and the CMOs are under a lot of pressure. I get it.
It's hard.
What I'll close with, I'll ask you this one question. What are two, if you were sitting with a CMO who just took over, say mid-market or enterprise, and you said, these are the 3 things you should focus on for the next year, what would those be?
Oh man, look at you.
I'm not throwing arrows, but I'm giving you, I just hung a curve over the plate.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, look, I think as a follow-on to what we just said, I think the single most important thing that I'm not sure everyone does first is this grasp of the customer. I just talked to one of the sales consultants I work with. He's like, if looking back, he had just done a project. He's like, looking back, I wish that these guys had 6 months to really figure out their ideal customer profile. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I mean, we start with it, but then you talk to the customers and you start to realize who's real and who's not. And he's like, we did the customer conversations to really understand the ideal customer profile. But then when we did like them, right, and the person out the story we just told, he's like, but then I learned like that wasn't really, we had to refine it from there. We continue to refine it, not because sales came back and said, that's not working, I just did a call, it didn't work. No, because we're talking to multiple people. So I would add this really simple thing that every marketer should do, which is you should talk. They don't like when I tell them this. So one is we need everything start left to right, everything or top to bottom, whatever you do, like the first thing we do is a deep understanding of the customer and then get everyone on board with that. Like that, when the alignment, I know we didn't talk about it. I know you've been talking about it for years, but like if we align on the customer, good things happen. The second thing is they should talk to 10 people related to the customer or the market each week. That's a lot.
Yep.
And but you got to do it and they'll get to 6, right? It's fine. But you set this goal high, you got to talk to partners, you got to talk to Carlos Hidalgo, you got to talk to you just have to do this, right? And it sounds like, well, Craig, that's not actionable. It's completely actionable. The thing we lose is we don't talk to the market anymore. And we sort of build this thing in a vacuum, or we take inputs in that are all internal facing. And it's like, you're a CMO, go talk to people. My favorite CMOs come in and they tell me more stories than anybody else because they're out there. They're like, I went to this conference and they took meetings the whole day. They went out to dinner and they came back with data, right, about, these folks. So I think setting a number and going to, I mean, honestly, especially right now, as your buyer changes, the most important thing you can do is talk to your customer. And, everyone says, well, we're not early stage. It's, yeah, that's the problem is you're late stage and you have no idea.
Right.
I have no clue. And
Mhm.
like you've got to go do that. So anyway, those are sort of two core fundamental things. But from there, right, you want to look at every piece of the journey. I'm going to add to my number three. So one is like, let's test things that make sense for our buyer, right? From a go-to-market perspective. You can start with, like, generally speaking, if you do enough, you have enough understanding of your buyer and you look at your competitors and how they're going to market, you can make a good judgment and bet.
Sure.
Uh, over the next couple of years, people will be dumping their data into a cloud warehouse and they'll be able to see the journey and the activities of their buyers better than they've ever done before. That is happening now and it's going to continue to happen. All the things we've wanted people to do from a data perspective has always been so hard because we had the siloed Marketo here, Salesforce here. And like now you can dump it into, a cloud data warehouse and you can actually see the journey and see the things that are happening and learn from it. So like if I'm going to do anything, everything I just delivered was foundational, but that is key is like, can we, I believe right now, folks should be dumping their data into a cloud data and setting themselves up to get a real view of the journey. And so as you go do that, I know they want me to say, well, you should do webinars. It's like, well, look at your webinar numbers, by the way.
Right.
Right now we should set ourselves up for success because you're going to test and try a bunch of things. The only thing, if someone wanted something tactical, is as painful as LinkedIn is, it has been really successful for folks that take a mission narrative and start to publish on LinkedIn. And I'm still sort of grappling with the fact that after all these years, I don't know if the blog still makes total sense. Like you got to be where they are and like, can you publish into where they are? And I've just seen folks build this like brand around their people by publishing really important stuff on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, plenty of people have published crap on LinkedIn and done really well, which throws the everything off. But the ones that do a really good job, it's you can see the effects that that's having. If someone wanted something tactical, I know you
I
asked for
love
three.
it. I
Yeah,
love it. Well, I think you gave us four. So as usual, you over
three and a
deliver.
half.
Hey, Craig, thanks for joining us. This was great. We've got to do this more often. We don't have to record it, but I always enjoy talking with you, catching up, trying to figure out how California and New York can be closer together. But
We'll work on it.
yeah, we'll definitely make time to catch up with you. So we'll have all of Craig's details in the show notes. This is going to be a wrap on episode 2 of Growthology. We want to thank Craig Rosenberg from Scale Venture Partners, and then be sure to join our Growthology community. We'll get some bonus footage of Craig. We'll ask him one more question and we'll post it up there. All we need is your name and your email address. Thanks, everybody. Make it a great day.